Very much, and Professor Knight, thank you for inviting me. I will say a few things at the beginning, because the whole idea was to give people who are part of the club and people in the community an opportunity to ask questions. So, in a lot of ways, former Senator Chuck Hagel captured what I've been trying to say all the way through this campaign better than I've been saying all the way through this campaign, which is that Washington's got to change. And the central promise of the campaign, and I understand skeptics, that people are skeptical that all that actually can be done, is that Republicans and Democrats are going to start working together. And because if they continue to, particularly when it comes to the budget and trying to get our economy to grow faster, and a couple of other significant issues where their primary concern is about giving each other victories, as opposed to worrying about whether or not they give the country a victory. We're going to, I think, continue to see Americans turned off to politics and democracy not functioning like it ought to. And it has gotten worse since I left in 2001. As Senator Hagel said yesterday, it's even gotten worse just in the 4 years that he's been gone from the United States Senate. And you can see, actually, in his performance yesterday and the reaction to his performance, what you have to do. You have to be willing to make men and women of your own party angry. And that's what he did. I made mostly 2 men, the governor and the senator, at it. Both of them, I mean, just think about it. I mean, both of them wouldn't have been governor without Chuck Hagel. That's how bad this thing has gotten. You know, that you're constantly worried about, how do you achieve a political victory rather than trying to figure out what to do. And I think what Senator Hagel did yesterday is my most recent reminder. And I had others relatively recently as well, but it's a memory, if elected on the 6th, that I'll carry to Washington with me. But give you another example. Senator McCain's in the state. I think he was supposed to be in Omaha today, endorsing Senator Fisher. And John and I are friends, and I can work with him, and he knows that. And I didn't solicit him saying anything nice about me, but I noticed that he didn't say anything negative about me, because he knows that he and I can work together. And we can work together on national security, and we can work in particular together on changing the rules of Congress. To reference another moment recently where I learned the power of Republicans and Democrats being unified was in 2004 when I was on the 9/11 Commission. Very partisan environment, presidential election year, a contentious election. And there was pressure on the 5 Democrats who were on that commission to blame George W. Bush. And Democrats were still upset that I didn't fight to name George W. Bush as a responsible party. And there was pressure on the Republicans to blame William Jefferson Clinton. And they resisted that pressure. As a consequence, the report of the commission had impact, and the Congress changed everything about the executive branch that we recommended, and I do think the country's safer. Significantly, they changed nothing that we recommended about themselves, and the man who carried the amendment lost in the Senate, never came to a vote in the House. It was Senator McCain, because Senator McCain's not afraid to rattle the cages of the status quo, and so I'm confident that I can work with he and others who I know love their country enough that they're willing to say no to Grover Norquist or others who are trying to fence them in and lock them down to one position or another. If they believe it's best for the country, they'll give a Democrat a victory because they know it's going to give the country a victory. I could go deeper, and perhaps better to wait to the questions and answers to talk about, or the questions, to talk about what may be on all of your minds. Just touch on one, and that obviously is a big issue for us today, which is how are we going to balance the budget? The way to balance the budget is that you got to take spending down. It's likely to be that there's going to be some revenue increases going to be needed as well. I was actually asked about an item that I didn't include in my budget in 1983 when I was governor that had an impact on Chadron State College that apparently some still remember. You know, we were in the middle of a terrible agricultural recession in 1983 with a budget deficit that was quite large. State employees didn't get a pay increase. I mean, the actual spending went down, not inflation adjusted, but went down from year one to year two. And people are going to get upset. But we increased the sales tax by half a point for a year, created a rainy day fund that's still used today. In part, we were able to do that, professional forecasting of revenue, balancing the budget, and having the legislature set the rates rather than the Board of Equalization. In part, I would say significantly in part, because the Nebraska legislature is nonpartisan. There isn't a Democrat or Republican leader that you have to work through. It's among the reasons that I'm advocating a change in the U.S. Constitution to do the same, to impose limitations as well of service to 12 years consecutive, and to give Congress the authority to ban all outside spending and place limitations on what could be spent in campaigns. Because it may be that the perception isn't as bad as reality, that is to say that money is corrupting politics, that people are making decisions based upon campaign contributions, not based upon what they actually believe is right. But the reality is bad enough. And if one of you, let's say, during the social hour afterwards, were to say to me, I'm thinking about running for the Senate against, I apologize, that's my duck. I just turned my duck on. I mean, my first question would be, do you meet the constitutional requirement of citizenship and age? My first question would be, could you raise the $5 or $6 million to get the job done? Because if the answer is no, it's not likely you can be a credible candidate. Well, that isn't right. I mean, I believe strongly that we're going to have to take spending down, and I believe strongly that some additional revenue is going to be needed. And I don't think if you raise, for example, taxes on people that make more than $1 million a year, that they're going to be foraging in the alley for food as a consequence, and I don't think it's going to be negative to the economy. The man in the 90s who got way too little credit for balancing the budget was George Herbert Walker Bush. And I remember, because I was in the Senate when he said it, we wouldn't have got it done had he not said it. He said, I know I said no new taxes, read my lips, but I'll support a tax increase if the Democrats agree to spending restraint. And we did. And all we did in 93 and 97 was to amend that underlying piece of legislation. And everyone who was against the 90 proposal, and everyone who was against the 93, I see television ads, Bob Kerrey voting for the largest tax increase in the history of the country. Well, that isn't true. The largest tax increase actually occurred way back in the 80s when Democrats and Republicans actually could work together to solve a problem. Ronald Reagan and Tip O'Neill fixed Social Security. And just like in 1990 and 93, everyone who was against it was saying, oh, if you raise taxes on upper income people, the economy's going to go into a recession, and all sorts of bad and terrible things are going to happen. But good things happen. We balanced the budget. When I left office, we were paying off debt. We didn't have to amend the Constitution. We were paying off debt. Did some people's taxes go up? Yes. Did some people get their programs cut? Yes. But in addition to balancing the budget, we did a number of other things that I think are terribly important, particularly in rural Nebraska. We increased the minimum wage 3 times. We passed family and medical leave. We passed the Children's Health Initiative. And with Senator Bob Dole leading in 1990, we passed the Americans with Disability Act. Important both to he and I, since both of us were injured and disabled in the war. I actually can't imagine somebody actually from the Republican Party doing that. There's a big government intervention in the marketplace, and all it did was open up economic and housing opportunities for people with disabilities. So as a consequence of all those things, and the growth that occurred in the economy because of balancing the budget, poverty rates went down. And it's among the reasons that I support the Affordable Health Care Act, because in 2014, when it kicks in, 120 to 140,000 Nebraskans who are working who are in the workforce today, making $8, $9, $10 an hour, will get on average $3,000 to be able to buy health insurance from an exchange, not from the government, but from an exchange. And it will, for many of them, lift them out of poverty. And that's a good thing. It's a good thing economically, and it's a good thing socially. And it doesn't shut down the free enterprise system by any stretch of the imagination. Just as, and I say this to people when we're debating this healthcare bill, in 1964 in Nebraska, 50% of Nebraskans over the age of 65 did not have health insurance. In 1966, 0% of Nebraskans did not have health insurance. And the question, looking at those two data points, is what happened in between? What happened between 1964 and 1966? Was it tort reform? Was it tax credits? Was it the generosity of the insurance companies? Was it the marketplace? No. It was federal law. In a single stroke of a pen in 1965, with the enactment of Medicare, it reduced the number of Nebraskans over the age of 65 who did not have health insurance to 0. And because the program is portable, unlike Medicaid, which in many ways is a terrible program because you have to prove that you're poor and then promise to stay poor to be eligible, unlike Medicaid, Medicare and Social Security are completely portable. If for some reason unfathomable to me, someone in Chadron says, I would prefer to be in Phoenix from December to January, I don't know why anybody would make such an irrational conclusion, but let's say you decide you would like to be in Phoenix during those 2 months, your Social Security and Medicare go with you. It's transformed what it means to be over the age of 65. Are there problems with the program? Yes. Is there an unfunded liability that we have to be concerned about? Budget issues? Yes. But the underlying proposition that we're going to intervene in the marketplace to improve the quality of life of people over the age of 65, it's worked. Because it has improved the quality of life of people over the age of 65. And oh, by the way, in Nebraska, $6 billion a year comes into Nebraska for those two programs. And when you think about those two programs, think about rural health care. Healthcare is the second biggest employer in the state of Nebraska. In rural Nebraska, it's the first biggest employer. It's right up there with agriculture. $6 billion a year, by the way, is equal to a single year's corn crop price of $6 a bushel. So it has a major impact socially and economically. But it has dramatically altered the way we live. So I think not only do we need to balance the budget, but we do need to do it in a balanced way so that the law's on the side of people who are doing things that we want them to do. Going to work, taking care of themselves, etc. That's what you have to do, it seems to me. So I think I will stop gratefully to all of you and take whatever, thank Bob again and this organization for allowing me to speak. Again, I apologize for not being here yesterday. The Senator Hagel decision sort of interrupted the stream flow of this campaign a bit, but I hope in a positive way. And I'll be glad to take whatever questions you all might have.